Hello and welcome back to another edition of What Does This Deck Do? We are back after a slight hiatus, and this time we're covering the deck known officially as Cradle Control. The history of Cradle Control showcases the sheer ingenuity of legacy deck specialists. Cradle Control came about through the combined efforts of many pilots who were well versed in the deck known as Elves. One of these players was Newton Hang. This innovation was mainly because of the status of Elves as a deck at the time, to where players involved in the creation of Cradle Control began experimenting to attempt to find a solution to improving Elves, inadvertently creating a brand new deck in the process. The creation of Cradle Control as an archetype was not something that these players achieved overnight. The deck received a lot of tuning and work, making its way through many iterations. One important aspect of this deck building is that the players working on it were not afraid to make hard concessions on many of the Elves deck's so-called sacred cows of its deck building. This led to these deck specialists to consider cards that would generally not be considered in typical Elves. In doing so, the end result was a deck that is slower than combo Elves, but resilient and powerful. The original iterations of Cradle Control were built primarily around the powerhouse of Elvish, Reclaimer, and Fiend Artisan. The core strategy of this deck is utilizing effects like Reclaimer to fetch Gaia's Cradle, and Artisan to nab silver bullet threats out of the library, combined with some very typical Elves-like gameplay via Natural Order and cards like Craterhoof Behemoth. The resulting deck plays out very much like a toolbox strategy, utilizing various creatures to attack various parts of the game. For a while, the deck had earned the name Reclaimer Elves until it became very apparent that the deck no longer played enough actual Elves to carry that moniker, and it became its own thing. Over the time, the deck has changed a bit, but Reclaimer has remained central to the deck's strategy, which is to deploy threats that end the game while attacking the opponent's game plan with silver bullet toolbox cards. The past few years, however, have been incredibly kind to Cradle Control as a strategy and legacy. The set Phyrexia All Will Be One gave the deck one of the most powerful natural order targets in Atraxa Grand Unifier, but it was really Modern Horizons 3 that boosted the power level of this deck many times over. Wight of the Reliquary quickly replaced Fiend Artisan as the primary toolbox tutor threat, due in part that it worked much better than Artisan, which was very mana-hungry. In addition, Cradle Control became one of the decks able to fully utilize the power level of Springheart Nantuko, a card that on the surface doesn't look at all that impressive until you are generating a bunch of Dryad Arbor, or Wight of the Reliquary, or even Endurance. Just as well, the deck also got Talon Gates of Madara, a land with a very spell-like effect that could be hunted down with Reclaimer or Wight. Because of how this deck was developed, Cradle Control has a very thriving community of resources available. Players like Newton Hang and Testacular publish content on the deck, and the Cradle Control Discord is full of pilots willing to help newer players to the deck learn its intricacies. There is quite a bit out there on this deck, so be sure to check out those videos on YouTube. Thank you for checking out this week's edition of What Does This Deck Do? We're going to be getting back into a regular swing of things with this series, so please take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos. I've received some great suggestions from Blue Sky on decks to cover next, so be on the lookout for that. With that said, have a great week, and I'll see you all next time.